Hi, I'm Jeff. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you're watching this video, and welcome to the second video in this series of essential facts that you need to consider before becoming a driving instructor. And now hopefully from watching the video yesterday you have realised that you will be able to train to become a driving instructor because you meet all of the criteria that I highlighted to you. And if you know that is the case, then there's absolutely no need for you to hang around and wait, because there is no quota for people who can join the register. As long as you meet the criteria that has been set down, then you definitely will be accepted. So therefore you may as well crack on and start your training straight away, because it will take a number of weeks to go through that DBS check and application process. So let's now have a quick look at what the training and exams process is. So to begin with, what I'd like you to do is just think about your training as being effectively one exam or test broken down into three sections, which are referred to as Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3. Now in Part 1 you're going to have to prove that you've got a very good knowledge of the highway code, the rules of the road, the laws that apply to both being a driving instructor and being a driver. And also you're going to need to be able to identify what we call developing hazards whilst on the road. So the Part 1 test is broken down into 100 multiple choice questions, and then there are 4 subcategories within those with 25 questions in each. And then that's followed by a hazard perception test, where you're going to be presented with 14 CGI, not real life video clips, albeit they are very realistic. It's almost as if you're watching the road through the windscreen of your car, but in reality, of course, you're just looking at a computer screen and you have a mouse, and then you have to identify and then click on when a potential hazard turns into what we call a developing hazard, which typically means that as a driver, if something like that happened on the road for real, then it would require you either to change your road position or your speed. Now when it comes to the hazard perception test, changing your speed normally means slowing down, so easing off the gas or hitting the brake. Because it is purely a theory test, then it's computer based. You go to an office building which has been approved by the DVSA to run a theory test. You sit in front of the computer. The test lasts for around an hour and a half, and you'll be given the results of the test immediately at the end. Of course, it is important that you prepare for the test, and we can certainly help you do that. There are also a number of commercially available downloadable apps these days, such as Theory Test Pro and Driving Test Success, which I would highly recommend. And you can do the training simply at home in your own time when it's suitable for you. Now, of course, as a full license holder, with somebody that's already got a lot of driving experience and hopefully already a good knowledge of the highway code, then it is likely that you are going to know the answer to a lot of the multiple choice questions, even now without any revision or study, and you'll probably be fairly good at identifying the developing hazards as well. That said, I wouldn't take it for granted, because there are going to be a number of multiple choice questions I'm pretty sure you won't know the answer to, and the hazard perception clip can be a little bit of a tricky one, particularly for full license holders, because it's quite possible that you'll actually spot the developing hazard before the system sort of almost wants you to, if that makes sense. So it is possible that you can actually click just a fraction too early, and then rather than getting a score of 5, which is the maximum you can get, you get a score of 0. So like any other test, it has its own little quirks, and it is important to understand what they are and how to revise for the test in the right way, so hopefully you're being successful in passing it on your first attempt. And of course at AAT we can help you do that. We have a Part 1 dedicated training course that will walk you through the process. It will explain how to use the apps effectively to revise for your test, and will give you, a very clear heads up in terms of what to expect on the day, the types of questions that you're going to get presented with, how to avoid some of the training pitfalls that often catch people out, and then what to do once you have passed your part 1. Once you have passed your part 1, then you will be able to book and prepare for your part 2 test, which is a driving test. It's very similar to the standard learner driving test. The difference is it lasts longer. It lasts for an hour rather than 38 to 40 minutes. You'll be asked to do more manoeuvres. There are more questions about the safety and maintenance vehicle checks that you need to be aware of and carry out on your car. These are called the show me tell me questions. You're going to be required to drive obviously to a higher standard than a learner would be, and therefore unsurprisingly the pass mark is harder to achieve. So in order to pass the part 2 test, you'll need to get 6 or fewer driving errors, or as they're often referred to, minor faults, and no serious or dangerous faults. And I'm sure, as you would expect, we can help you out with preparing for your part 2 test. So again, we have a dedicated part 2 training course which will take you through everything you need to know. It will help you to become very analytical about your own driving, and we'll be giving you some tips as to how you can get out of any bad habits that you've picked up along the way that might not necessarily cause you an issue with regards to your day-to-day driving, but certainly would cause you an issue with regards to your part 2 test. We'll clearly explain to you what the required driving standards are. There are lots of demonstration videos to help you see those in action. And there are also assessments that are going to help you to reflect on your own development, so you have that confidence and assurance that you're going to need in order to go into the part 2 test and hopefully be knocking it out of the park on the first attempt. Then finally on your part 3 test, which is a test of your teaching ability. So this is where you'll be assessed by an examiner sat in the back of a real lesson on your ability to be able to identify and recognize the learning goals and challenges of the student that you're using for your part 3 test, whether that's a learner or potentially a full license holder, and then help them put solutions in place that are going to either fill knowledge gaps or build on skills gaps or help improve perhaps a confidence gap. So the part 3 test is broken down into 17 competencies that fall under 3 broad categories, which are lesson planning, risk management, and teaching and learning strategies. The test itself lasts currently post-COVID for approximately 45 minutes in total, with the actual lesson part of it lasting for approximately 40 minutes. Now, what the examiner is going to want to see within that 40 minutes is what they call a wheels rolling lesson. So you can't spend long periods of time sat at the side of the road, going through lots of sort of detailed theory and analytical assessment of somebody's driving. The wheels should be rolling as much as possible, and you should be helping your student out on the move. So again, we provide a dedicated part 3 training course where we'll help you to fully understand what is required for the test and help you to develop that knowledge base and skill sets that you're going to need to confidently be able to demonstrate your ability to satisfy those 17 competencies that you're going to be assessed against. Okay, so I appreciate that's a very, very quick run through of the part 1, part 2 and part 3 exams. So what I've done is included some links in the information below this video, which will take you to the relevant sections of the DVSA website, where you'll be able to read further information and get a full breakdown of what the various pass marks are that are required for each of the exams. Also, given that these videos are all about making sure that you have the essential facts, what I do need to highlight to you is that post-COVID, unfortunately, the wait times for Part 2 and Part 3 tests can be quite lengthy. Okay, it could be 2-3 months, even longer in some parts of the country, before you get a test date coming along. And then of course, if you're unsuccessful in passing those on your first attempt, then you're going to need to take a resit, and that could be another 2-3-4 months or so that you're waiting for that resit to come along. Now, what I would say on that basis is, again, that tends to suit people who are training online, because you can spread your training out, you can book test dates in, you know how long you're going to therefore have to prepare for that test, as opposed to going through often what is quite an intensive training program if you go with a driving school, where they condense all of your training down into maybe a 12-week period or something like that. But of course, you've then got to wait around for months before your test date comes along, and by the time that date arrives, then a lot of that training that you've done previously has sort of started to dissipate. It's not fresh in your head, and that could seriously impact your chances of being able to pass your tests on your first attempt. And then of course, if you're unsuccessful, the likelihood is the driving school is then going to be asking you to go back and do some more top-up training, which almost undoubtedly they're going to look to charge you for. Whereas of course with online training, you get to pace it out, and additionally you get to revisit that training over and over again as often as is required, to a point where you feel totally confident in what you're doing. And then if needed, you can then maybe get that validated by an in-car trainer that we can put you in touch with. That way, you know that when you're going down and sitting your Part 2 and Part 3 exams, you're fully prepared, everything's nice and fresh in your head, and as I said before, hopefully you are knocking it out of the park on your first attempt. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow, where we're going to have a look at what life is like as a driving instructor.